5:47 a.m., a dirt road outside Millfield, and Ace Sheridan was about to make the kind of decision that rewrites two lives forever. He spotted her through the cracked windshield of his pickup truck, a figure hunched against the morning cold, walking slow and heavy along the gravel shoulder. Pregnant. Very pregnant. Alone. Most people would have driven past. After all, what's one stranger's problem when you're already drowning in your own? But Ace pulled over, rolled down his window, and said two words that would change everything: hop in. What he didn't know was that Indigo Prescott wasn't just any farmhand. She was carrying secrets that would shake the foundation of their small town. And what she didn't know was that the man offering her a ride was about to lose everything he'd spent 10 years building. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and when this story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Let's dive in. The sun hadn't crested the horizon yet, painting the Nebraska sky in bruised purples and tired grays. Ace squinted through his windshield, coffee steam fogging the glass as he drove the familiar route to Mira Booker's farm. Same road, same time, same routine that had kept him sane since his world fell apart 3 years ago. That's when he saw her daughter, a woman walking the shoulder, backpack slung over one arm, the other hand pressed to her lower back. Even from a distance, her silhouette told a story: the careful gait, the way she paused every few steps. Pregnant, and not just a little. Ace's foot found the brake without conscious thought. His 8-year-old son Zion stirred in the passenger seat, still wrapped in a dinosaur blanket. "Dad," Zion's voice was thick with sleep. "Why'd we stop?" "Just a second, buddy." Ace pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under his tires. Through the passenger window, he could see her more clearly now. Mid-20s, maybe. Dark hair escaping from a ponytail, work boots worn thin at the heels. She looked up as his truck approached, and he caught a glimpse of eyes that held too much weight for someone so young that he rolled down the window. "You okay, miss?" She stopped walking, one hand moving protectively to her belly. "I'm fine, thank you." But her voice carried the kind of fine that meant anything but. The kind of fine that came with sleeping in your car and counting every dollar. "Twice." "Where you headed?" Ace asked, keeping his voice gentle. He'd learned that tone from his late wife, the one that said help was being offered, not demanded. "Booker Farm," she said, lifting her chin slightly. "I start work today." Ace blinked. Mira hadn't mentioned hiring anyone new, especially not someone in her condition. But then again, Mira Booker was full of surprises. "Well," he said, reaching across to unlock the passenger door, "that's where we're headed to. Hop in." The woman, girl, really hesitated. In that pause, Ace saw her weighing options, calculating risks. The kind of mental math you did when safety was never guaranteed. "I'm Ace," he said. "This is my son Zion. We help out at Myra's farm. Been doing it for years." Something in his voice must have convinced her because she walked around to the passenger side. Zion scooted over to make room, his dinosaur blanket dragging behind him. "I'm Indigo," she said as she settled into the seat. "Indigo Prescott." "Cool name," Zion piped up, suddenly wide awake. "Like the color." Indigo smiled, the first real smile Ace had seen from her. Exactly like the color. As Ace pulled back onto the road, he caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, one hand absently rubbing her belly. There was something about her posture, the way she held herself, that reminded him of a bird with a broken wing, still trying to fly but preparing for the fall. "How far along?" he asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. 7.5 months, she said without looking away from the window. The number hung in the air between them. 7.5 months, and she was starting work at a farm. Alone. Zion, bless his 8-year-old heart, filled the silence. "My mom used to say pregnant ladies are growing miracles. She said it takes super strength to make a person." Ace's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Even 3 years later, Zion's casual mentions of Liana still hit like a sucker punch. But Indigo turned to look at the boy, and her smile was softer this time. "Your mom sounds like she was very wise." "She was," Zion said matter-of-factly. "She died when I was 5, but Dad says she's still taking care of us from heaven." Ace cleared his throat. "Zion, it's okay," Indigo said quietly. "I'm sorry for your loss." They drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence, the truck's heater humming against the morning chill. Ace found himself stealing glances at this unexpected passenger, wondering what circumstances had brought a heavily pregnant woman to walking country roads at dawn. As they turned into the long driveway leading to Booker Farm, Indigo sat up straighter. The farmhouse came into view, white clapboard with green shutters, wraparound porch, barn red outbuildings scattered across rolling fields. It looked like something from a postcard, the kind of place that promised fresh starts and second chances. It's beautiful, Indigo whispered. Myra's put her whole life into this place, Ace said, parking near the barn. She's good people. Tough, but fair. As if summoned by his words, Mira Booker emerged from the barn. 50-something, steel gray hair braided down her back, boots that had seen 1,000 morning chores. She walked with the confident stride of a woman who'd earned every acre of this land through sweat and stubbornness. Her eyes found Indigo immediately, and something passed across her weathered features. Recognition, maybe, or surprise. "You must be the girl who called," Mira said, approaching the truck. Indigo nodded, suddenly looking younger than her years. "Yes, ma'am." Indigo Prescott. Myra's gaze lingered on her belly, then shifted to Ace with a look that said they'd be having words later. But when she spoke again, her voice was kind. "Well then, let's get you settled. Can't have you standing around in your condition." As Indigo climbed out of the truck, Ace caught Myra's eye. The older woman's expression was unreadable, but he'd known her long enough to recognize the look she got when trouble was brewing. And something told him that trouble had just arrived in the form of a pregnant farmhand with secrets in her eyes. The barn smelled like hay and possibility, morning light streaming through gaps in the weathered wood like golden arrows. Indigo stood in the doorway, taking it all in, the organized chaos of farm equipment, the soft nickering of horses in distant stalls, the earthy scent that spoke of honest work and simple living. That it was nothing like the sterile conference rooms and marble lobbies she'd left behind. Nothing like the world where her name had once meant something. "You ever worked a farm before?" Mira asked, watching Indigo with the keen eyes of someone who'd spent decades reading people and livestock in equal measure. "Some," Indigo lied smoothly. "I'm a quick learner." The truth was more complicated. The truth was that 6 months ago, she'd been Indigo Prescott Griffin, married to tech mogul Bodie Griffin, living in a penthouse that cost more than most people made in a lifetime. The truth was that she'd discovered things about her husband that made her realize she was sharing a bed with a stranger. The truth was that she'd run with nothing but a backpack and enough cash to last a few weeks, if she was careful. "Good," Mira said. "Because around here, we believe in earning our keep. You'll start with the chickens, gathering eggs, cleaning coops. Light work, considering your condition." Ace lingered by the truck, Zion now fully awake and chasing a barn cat around the yard. Something about the way he watched Indigo suggested he was putting pieces together, trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't known existed. "Mira," he said carefully, "when did you?" "Yesterday." Mira cut him off. "Girl called." "Yesterday. Said she needed work and a place to stay." Sometimes life sends you what you need when you need it. But Ace knew Mira well enough to hear the undertone. This wasn't just charity. This was Mira Booker making one of her calculated decisions, the kind that looked random but never were. "Where you coming from?" Ace asked Indigo directly. She hesitated, and in that pause, he saw her choosing her story. "Denver, originally. Been moving around since." She gestured vaguely at her belly. "Since things got complicated." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Denver was where she'd grown up, before college, before law school, before she'd become someone else entirely, before she'd learned that money could buy silence, but not safety. "Well," Mira said, clapping her hands together, "standing around won't get the chores done. Indigo, let me show you to the cottage. You can get settled, then we'll start easy." The cottage sat about 100 yards from the main house, tucked between an apple orchard and a vegetable garden. Small but tidy, with a front porch just big enough for a rocking chair and a pot of geraniums. It looked like the kind of place where someone could disappear completely, and that suited Indigo just fine. "It's not much," Mira said, pushing open the front door. "But it's clean and quiet. Rent's taken out of your wages, along with meals if you want them." The interior was simple, a main room with a kitchenette, a bedroom barely big enough for a double bed, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub that had seen better decades. Sunlight streamed through white cotton curtains, making everything feel warm and welcoming. For the first time in months, Indigo felt her shoulders relax. "It's perfect," she said, and meant it. "Good." Mira studied her for a moment. "I don't ask a lot of questions around here. Figure people's business is their own unless it affects the farm. But I will say this, whatever you're running from, you're safe here." "Understood." Indigo's throat tightened. "Understood." After Mira left, Indigo sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself exactly 60 seconds to fall apart. The baby kicked a sharp jab against her ribs, and she placed both hands on her belly. "We made it," she whispered. "We're safe." But even as she said it, she knew safety was temporary. It always was, especially when you were carrying secrets worth killing for. Outside, she could hear Zion's laughter as he helped his father unload supplies from the truck. The sound was pure and uncomplicated, the kind of joy that came from morning adventures and the promise of a day spent doing meaningful work. When was the last time she'd heard laughter like that? When was the last time she'd felt it herself? Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize but knew by heart. The message was short, just 4 words that made her blood run cold. "Found you. Coming home." Indigo deleted the message and turned off the phone. Then she walked to the window and looked out at the rolling fields. The barn where Ace was now helping Mira organize equipment. The simple life that stretched out before her like a gift she didn't deserve. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if sensing her distress. "Not yet," she whispered, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. "Just give us a little more time." But time, she was learning, was the one thing money couldn't buy. And somewhere out there, the past was already packing its bags. 2 hours later, Indigo stood in a chicken coop, holding a basket of warm eggs and wondering how her life had become so beautifully, impossibly ordinary. The hens clucked around her feet, unbothered by her presence, and the work felt good in a way she hadn't expected, physical, real, the opposite of everything she'd left behind. "You're a natural," Ace said from the doorway, making her jump. She turned, one hand instinctively going to her belly. "Sorry, you startled me." "Didn't mean to." He stepped into the coop, moving with the easy confidence of someone who belonged. "In spaces like this, thought you might want some company." Zion's helping Mira with the horses. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Indigo gathering eggs while Ace checked the feed and water. There was something soothing about the routine, the simple pattern of care and response. "Can I ask you something?" Ace said finally. Indigo tensed. "Sure. When's the last time you saw a doctor?" Of all the questions she'd been expecting, that wasn't one of them. Why? "Because you're 7.5 months pregnant and walking country roads at dawn," he said gently. "Because you look like you haven't slept in weeks. Because my wife was pregnant once, and I know what someone looks like when they're carrying more weight than just a baby." The kindness in his voice almost broke her. "I'm fine." "That's the second time you've said that." Ace leaned against the wall, studying her with those steady brown eyes. "Want to try for truth this time?" Indigo set down the egg basket and looked at him, really looked. Crow's feet from squinting into too many sunrises. Calloused hands that spoke of honest work. A face that had seen loss but hadn't let it turn bitter. "Why do you care?" she asked. "Because someone needs to." He shrugged. "Because Zion likes you, and he's got good instincts about people. Because Mira doesn't take in strays unless they need taking in. And because," he paused, searching for words, "because sometimes life gives you a chance to do better than you did before." The baby chose that moment to deliver a particularly forceful kick, making Indigo gasp and press both hands to her side. "You okay?" Ace was beside her in an instant, one hand hovering near her elbow. "Just active," she managed, breathing through the discomfort. "The baby's been restless all morning." "How restless?" Something in his tone made her look up. "What do you mean?" "My wife had what the doctors called an active baby. Turned out to be early labor contractions." His voice was careful, controlled. "When did they start?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Indigo didn't want to face. Because the truth was, the tightening in her belly had been coming and going since yesterday. The truth was, she'd been ignoring it, hoping it would stop. The truth was, her baby might be coming whether she was ready or not. And she was 7.5 months pregnant, alone in the world, carrying secrets that could destroy lives. "Indigo," Ace said softly. "When did they start?" The cramping hit again at 2:17 p.m., sharp enough to make Indigo drop the garden rake she'd been using to turn compost. She pressed both hands to her belly, breathing through the tightness, willing it to pass that it didn't. Across the garden, Ace looked up from the tomato plants he'd been staking. Their eyes met, and she saw the exact moment he registered her expression. "How far apart?" he asked, already moving toward her. "They're not." Indigo started, then gasped as another wave hit. "Maybe 10 minutes? 15. That's labor, Indigo." The word she'd been avoiding hung between them like a diagnosis. 7.5 months. Too early. Far too early. "No," she said, shaking her head. "It's just Braxton Hicks. False labor. I read about it." But even as she said it, she knew he was right. This felt different from the practice contractions she'd been having for weeks. Deeper, more purposeful, like her body had made a decision without consulting her. Ace was beside her now, one hand on her elbow. "We need to get you to a hospital." "I can't." The words came out sharp, panicked. "I mean, I don't have insurance. I can't afford." "Indigo." His voice was firm but gentle. "Money doesn't matter when a baby's coming early. We'll figure out the rest later." "You don't understand." She pulled away from him, backing toward the cottage. "I can't go to a hospital. I can't use my real name. If they find me." She stopped, realizing she'd said too much. Ace's expression shifted, pieces clicking into place. "Who's looking for you?" Before she could answer, another contraction hit, stronger than the others. This time she couldn't hide it, couldn't breathe through it quietly. A low moan escaped her lips as she doubled over. "That's it," Ace said. "We're going. Now." "Wait." Myra's voice cut across the garden. She'd appeared from nowhere, moving with the quick efficiency of someone who'd handled crises before. "How far apart are they?" 8 minutes, maybe less, Ace replied. Myra nodded, already thinking 3 steps ahead. "Zion's with the horses. We'll take him to my sister's in town, then head to the hospital." "I can't," Indigo started. "Yes, you can." Myra's voice brooked no argument. "And you will. Because whatever trouble you're running from, it's not worth risking your baby's life." 20 minutes later, they were in Ace's truck, speeding toward Millfield General Hospital. Indigo sat in the passenger seat, timing contractions with the stopwatch app on her phone. Ace drove with the focused intensity of a man who'd done this before, who knew that sometimes the difference between life and death came down to traffic lights and turn signals that in the back seat. Myra kept up a steady stream of conversation, her voice calm and measured. She talked about the weather, about the farm, about anything except the fact that they were racing to save a baby who might be too small to survive. 7 minutes apart, Indigo announced, her voice tight with pain. "Almost there," Ace said. The hospital rose ahead of them, all glass and steel and urgent purpose. Ace pulled up to the emergency entrance, and suddenly everything moved in fast forward. Wheelchairs and scrubs and questions fired rapid fire. "How far along?" 31 weeks. "Previous pregnancies?" "None." "Prenatal care?" Indigo hesitated. The truth was complicated. Regular checkups until 6 months ago, then nothing. No doctor willing to see her without insurance, without a steady address, without answers to questions she couldn't afford to answer. "Something," said finally. They wheeled her into a room that smelled of antiseptic and urgency. Monitors beeped, nurses moved with practiced efficiency. And through it all, Ace stood by the window, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "You don't have to stay," Indigo told him during a brief lull between contractions. "Yes, I do." "What?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the parking lot where Mira was pacing and making phone calls. "Because nobody should go through this alone. Because Liana, my wife, she had complications with Zion. Spent 3 days in a room just like this one, scared out of her mind." "What happened?" "She was fine. Zion was fine. But those 3 days," he turned to look at her. "Nobody should face something like this without someone in their corner." The next contraction hit like a freight train, and suddenly the room filled with urgent voices. Doctors, nurses, machines that beeped louder and faster. "We need to stop this labor," someone said. "The baby's not ready. Heart rate's dropping. Get me 2 milligrams of." The voices blurred together as pain and fear clouded Indigo's vision. Through it all, she was aware of Ace's presence, steady and unwavering. He didn't offer empty reassurances or false comfort. He just stayed. Mrs. Prescott, a doctor with kind eyes and graying temples, appeared beside her bed. I'm Dr. Opal Mendez. We're going to do everything we can to keep this baby cooking a little longer, but I need you to stay calm. Can you do that for me? Indigo nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. Now, I need to ask, is there anyone we should call? The baby's father. The question hit her like ice water. Bodhi, her husband, who wasn't really her husband anymore, whose name was connected to things that made her stomach turn. The man who'd sent that text, who was coming home for her. No, she said quickly. No, there's no one to call. Dr. Mendez glanced at Ace, who stepped forward slightly. I'm a friend. He said simply, friend. Such a small word for someone who'd pulled over on a country road and decided to care. Someone who was sitting in a hospital at 3 in the afternoon because a stranger needed someone in their corner. All right then, Dr. Mendez said. Let's see if we can convince this little one to wait a few more weeks. The next few hours blurred. Together in a haze of medications and monitoring, doctors coming and going, machines that tracked every heartbeat and contraction. The labor slowed, then stopped, then threatened to start again. Through it all, Ace stayed. He held her hand during the worst contractions, fetched ice chips when her mouth went dry, and somehow managed to keep Zion entertained during his brief visits. The 8-year-old had appointed himself official baby watcher, providing a running commentary on every blip and beep from the monitors. The baby's heart is beating really fast, he observed during one visit. Is that good? It means the baby's strong, Ace told him. Just like you were. As evening settled over the hospital, Dr. Mendez returned with cautiously optimistic news. We've managed to stop active labor, but you're going to need to stay on bed rest. Complete bed rest. Any activity could trigger contractions again. For how long? Indigo asked. Ideally, 8 more weeks. Realistically, we'll take it one day at a time. 8 weeks. 2 months of staying still, staying hidden, hoping that the past wouldn't catch up before her baby was ready to face the world. Where will you go? Dr. Mendez asked gently. Do you have somewhere safe to rest? Indigo opened her mouth to say she didn't know, that she'd figure something out, that she always did. But before she could speak, Ace's voice cut through the silence. She'll stay at the farm, he said. We'll make sure she rests. Dr. Mendez nodded approvingly. Good. She'll need monitoring, regular checkups. Any stress could trigger premature labor again. Stress. If only she knew the half of it'd as the doctor left. Indigo turned to Ace. You don't have to do this. You barely know me. No, he agreed. But I know what it's like to be scared and alone when someone you love is in danger. I know what it feels like to need help and not know where to find it. This isn't your problem. Maybe not, but it's my choice. Outside the window, night was falling over the Nebraska plains. Somewhere out there, the past was closing in. But for now, in this sterile room with its beeping monitors and antiseptic smell, Indigo allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found a place where 2 broken hearts could heal each other. The baby kicked gently, as if offering its own vote of confidence. 7.5 weeks to go. The call came at 11:43 p.m., 3 days after Indigo had been released from the hospital on strict bed rest orders. Ace was dozing in the chair beside her bed in the cottage. He'd insisted on staying close, just in case, when his phone buzzed against the nightstand. Unknown number. At this hour, that usually meant trouble. Hello? He answered quietly, stepping out onto the porch so he wouldn't wake Indigo. Is this Ace Sheridan? The voice was male, polished, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Who's asking? My name is Bodhi Griffin. I believe you've been helping my wife. The bottom dropped out of Ace's stomach. He glanced back through the window at Indigo, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, one hand resting protectively on her belly. I think you have the wrong number. Indigo Prescott Griffin. The voice continued smoothly. 5'6", dark hair, 7 months pregnant with my child. She's been staying at a farm outside Millfield. Your farm, Mr. Sheridan. Ace stepped further from the house, his mind racing. How had this man found them? More importantly, who was he? And why was Indigo running from him? Like I said, she stole something from me. Bodhi interrupted. Something worth more than you can imagine. I'm coming to collect what's mine, my wife and my property. If she left, maybe she had good reason. A laugh cold and humorless. Indigo has always been dramatic. Emotional. Pregnancy hormones have made it worse. She needs help, Mr. Sheridan. Medical help. The kind I can provide. Every instinct Ace had developed over 10 years of reading people told him this man was dangerous. The way he talked about Indigo, like she was property, something to be collected rather than someone to be cherished. When Ace asked, tomorrow afternoon, and Mr. Sheridan, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Indigo belongs with me. The line went dead. Ace stood on the porch for a long moment, staring out at the darkened fields. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, a lonely sound that echoed how he felt. In 3 days, Indigo had become part of their small family. Zion adored her, making her laugh with his endless questions about babies and asking if he could help name the little one. Mira had taken to bringing her meals and sitting beside her bed, sharing stories about the farm's history. And Ace, well, Ace had started to hope again. Hope that maybe this broken thing inside him could heal. Hope that love didn't have to end with loss. Now a stranger's voice on the phone threatened to take that all away. He went back inside, moving quietly. Indigo was still asleep, but even in rest, lines of worry creased her forehead. What had this Bodhi Griffin done to put that fear there? What kind of man did his pregnant wife run from? In the morning, over breakfast at the main house, Ace told Mira everything. She listened without interruption, her weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had seen 1,000 morning conversations. So, she said when he finished, he's coming for her this afternoon, and she doesn't know. I didn't want to wake her. The stress, Dr. Mendez said any stress could trigger labor again. Mira was quiet for a moment, staring out the kitchen window toward the cottage where Indigo was probably just waking up, probably pressing her hands to her belly to feel for the baby's morning movements. What do you know about this man? She asked finally. Nothing, but the way he talked about her. Ace shook his head, like she was property, like the baby was property. Men like that don't usually let go easy. No, they don't. Zion appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, hair sticking up in 17 different directions. Dad, is Indigo okay? You look worried. Ace forced a smile. She's fine, buddy. Just some grown-up stuff. Is someone trying to hurt her? The question caught Ace off guard. Kids had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things. Maybe, he said honestly, but we won't let them. Good, Zion said with the fierce certainty of childhood. She's family now. Family. The word hit Ace like a physical blow. When had that happened? When had this pregnant stranger become someone he'd fight for? Zion, Mira said gently, why don't you go get dressed? Maybe you can help me with the horses later. After the boy left, Mira turned back to Ace. You care about her. It wasn't a question. Yeah, he admitted. I do. More than you expected. More than I planned. Life's funny that way. Mira stood, refilling her coffee. Plans change. Hearts heal. Sometimes when you're not even trying. Mira, that girl's running from something bad, Ace. I can see it in her eyes. Same look I had when I left my first husband 25 years ago. This was the first time Mira had ever mentioned being married before. Ace stared at her, pieces clicking into place. He hurt you. He tried to. Her voice was matter of fact, but steel ran underneath it. Took me 3 tries to leave, and 2 broken ribs before I finally understood that love isn't supposed to feel like fear. What did you do? Disappeared. Changed my name. Came here, started over. Sometimes running isn't cowardice, Ace. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do. At noon, Ace walked to the cottage with a sandwich and the burden of terrible news. He found Indigo in the rocking chair by the window, reading one of the baby books Mira had brought her. How are you feeling? He asked, setting the sandwich on the side table. Better. The baby's been quiet today. She looked up, and her expression shifted. What's wrong? There was no good way to say it, so Ace chose directness. Your husband called last night. All color drained from Indigo's face. The book slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. Bodhi, he knows where you are. He's coming this afternoon. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she was up, ignoring the doctor's orders about bed rest, moving toward the bedroom with the frantic energy of someone used to running. I have to go, she said, pulling her small suitcase from under the bed. I can't be here when he arrives. I can't. Indigo, stop. Ace caught her hands, stilling them. The doctor said bed rest. Any stress? You don't understand. Her voice was high, brittle. You don't know what he's capable of. Then tell me. She looked at him, really looked, and he saw the moment she made her choice. The moment she decided to trust him with the truth. He's not just my husband, she said quietly. He's Bodie Griffin. Griffin Tech. You might have heard of him. Ace had. Griffin Tech was one of the biggest software companies in the country. Government contracts, military applications, the kind of money that bought silence and influence in equal measure. I worked for him. Indigo continued. Corporate lawyer. We got married 2 years ago, and I thought I was living a fairy tale. Beautiful house, unlimited resources, a husband who seemed to worship me. What changed? I found files. Hidden files on his personal computer. Government contracts for surveillance software being sold to countries that torture political prisoners. Technology designed to track dissidents, to silence opposition. Ace felt something cold settle in his stomach. When I confronted him, he said it was business. Just business. That I was being naive. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He said if I ever told anyone, if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure I disappeared completely, and that no one would ever believe me over him. The baby, I got pregnant right after I found the files. At first, I thought maybe it would change things. Maybe having a child would make him remember what was important. She laughed bitterly. Instead, he saw it as leverage. You'll never leave me now, he said. Who's going to believe a crazy pregnant woman over a respected businessman? So you ran. I took copies of the files. Insurance, I thought. Proof. And I ran. She pressed both hands to her belly. But he found me. Ace was quiet for a moment, processing everything she'd told him. Then he asked the only question that mattered. Do you trust me? Yes. Then we don't run. We make a stand. Before she could protest, he continued. Running means spending the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. It means raising your child in fear. It means letting him win. You don't understand the kind of power he has. No, Ace agreed. But I understand the kind of power you have. The truth. And sometimes that's enough. Outside, they heard the sound of gravel crunching under expensive tires. That he was here. The black Tesla Model S looked alien against the backdrop of weathered barn wood and prairie grass. It pulled up to the farmhouse with the quiet menace of money that didn't need to announce itself. Through the cottage window, Ace watched a man emerge, tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Bodie Griffin moved like someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. Even here, surrounded by chickens and compost piles, he carried himself with the entitled confidence of a man who'd never been told he couldn't have something he wanted. Stay here, Ace told Indigo, who had gone pale as winter moonlight. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Ace, promise me. She nodded, sinking back into the rocking chair, both hands pressed protectively to her belly. Ace stepped out onto the porch just as Bodie reached the cottage door. Up close, the man was younger than his silver hair suggested, maybe 40, with the kind of artificially perfect teeth that came from expensive dental work and the hollow eyes of someone who'd traded his soul in small increments. Mr. Sheridan, Bodie said, flashing a smile that never reached his eyes. Thank you for taking such good care of my wife. She's not your wife anymore. Legally, she is. And that's my child she's carrying. Bodie glanced toward the cottage door. Hello, darling. Time to come home. She doesn't want to see you. I'm sure pregnancy hormones have made her emotional. Confused. But I'm here now. I can take care of everything. Bodie reached into his jacket, and for a moment Ace tensed. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a checkbook. Name your price, Mr. Sheridan. For your trouble. And your silence. You think this is about money. Everything's about money. The question is just how much. Bodie clicked his pen with the casual confidence of someone who'd bought his way out of bigger problems than this. 50,000. 100. From inside the cottage came the sound of movement. Indigo getting up despite his orders to stay put. Bodie heard it too, his smile widening. Indigo, he called out. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You know how this ends. The cottage door opened, and Indigo stepped out. She looked fragile in the afternoon light, 7 months pregnant and exhausted from days of bed rest. But there was steel in her spine as she faced the man she'd married and learned to fear. Hello, Bodie. You look tired, darling. All this stress can't be good for the baby. His voice was silk over razor wire. It's time to come home. This is my home now. This. Bodhi gestured dismissively at the farm around them. Chickens and cow manure? You're a lawyer, Indigo. You're meant for better things. I was meant to be your accomplice, she said quietly. That's not the same thing. Something dangerous flashed in Bodhi's eyes. Careful, darling. Mr. Sheridan might start to wonder what you're talking about. Let him wonder. You signed NDAs, confidentiality agreements. You break those, you'll lose everything. And I mean everything. I've already lost everything, Indigo said. The question is whether I can live with myself if I stay quiet. Ace watched this exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't just about a marriage gone wrong. This was about power, about silence, about the kind of secrets that could topple empires if they ever saw daylight. The files, Bodhi said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than a shout. Where are they? Safe. Nothing's safe from me, Indigo. You know that. I have resources you can't imagine. People who make problems disappear permanently. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Bodhi glanced at Ace, then back at his wife. Accidents happen, especially to pregnant women under stress. Premature labor. Complications. So many things can go wrong. The words hit Ace like a physical blow. This man wasn't just threatening Indigo. He was threatening her unborn child. Threatening to take away the life they'd fought so hard to protect. You son of a bitch, Ace said, stepping forward. Mr. Sheridan, Bodhi said mildly. I'd be very careful about who you align yourself with. Indigo is mentally unstable. Delusional. Who's going to believe a pregnant runaway over a respected businessman with government contracts? I might. The voice came from behind them. Mira had appeared seemingly from nowhere, moving with the silent efficiency of someone who'd learned to be invisible when necessary. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a woman Ace didn't recognize, mid-50s, professional bearing, with the kind of alert intelligence that suggested law enforcement. Agent Liana Griffin, the woman said, showing her badge. FBI. Griffin. The name hit Ace like a sledgehammer. This was Indigo's late mother-in-law, Bodhi's own mother. Mom. Bodhi's composed facade cracked for the first time. What are you doing here? My job, Agent Griffin said coolly, following up on some very interesting allegations about Griffin Tech's overseas contracts. You can't be serious. Your wife contacted me 3 months ago, Agent Griffin continued. Sent me copies of files that make for very disturbing reading. We've been building a case ever since. Indigo gasped. You're Liana Griffin? But you're supposed to be dead? The older woman smiled grimly. That's what we wanted my son to believe. It made the investigation easier. Bodhi's face went white. This is entrapment. Illegal surveillance. This is justice, his mother said. Something I should have pursued years ago, before you became the kind of man who threatens pregnant women. She's my wife. She's a human being with rights. Rights you've systematically violated. Agent Griffin nodded to someone behind the barn, and suddenly the farmyard filled with federal agents. Bodhi Griffin, you're under arrest for conspiracy, human rights violations, and about 15 other charges that will keep you busy for the next several decades. As they cuffed him and read him his rights, Bodhi kept his eyes fixed on Indigo. This isn't over, he said. You'll never be free. Of me? Yes, Indigo said quietly. I will. After the FBI cars had disappeared down the dirt road, taking Bodhi and his threats with them, Ace found Indigo sitting on the cottage porch, tears streaming down her face. You okay? He asked, settling beside her. I called her, she whispered. His mother. 6 months ago, when I first found the files. I thought maybe she was dead like he claimed, but I had to try. I had to tell someone. She believed you. She said she'd been waiting years for someone to come forward, that she'd suspected but could never prove anything. Indigo wiped her eyes. She's the one who told me to run, to disappear until they could build a case. I thought I was alone this whole time, but she was protecting me. You're safe now, are we? Indigo looked down at her belly. Because I'm not sure I know how to live without looking over my shoulder. Ace took her hand, intertwining their fingers. Then we'll learn together. As the sun set over the Nebraska plains, painting the sky in shades of hope and possibility, Indigo felt her baby kick, not with distress this time, but with what felt like anticipation. For the first time in months, the future stretched ahead of them like an open road. The next 2 weeks passed like a fever dream of paperwork, interviews, and medical checkups. FBI agents became regular visitors to the farm, taking statements and gathering evidence. Indigo spent hours on video calls with prosecutors, her laptop balanced on her growing belly as she detailed every document, every conversation, every moment that had led her to understand the monster she'd married. Through it all, Ace stayed close, not hovering, but present in the way that mattered, bringing her tea during late-night strategy sessions, keeping Zion entertained when the adult conversations grew too heavy, simply existing as a steady presence in a world that had tilted sideways. The grand jury handed down indictments today. Agent Griffin, Liana, as she'd asked to be called, announced during one of her visits. She looked remarkably like her son, but where Bodhi's features held cold calculation, hers carried the warmth of someone who'd chosen justice over comfort. How many charges? Indigo asked from her bed rest position on the couch. 47, including conspiracy, human rights violations, illegal arms dealing, and… Liana paused. Attempted murder. The last charge hit the room like a thunderclap. The surveillance software he sold to Eastern European governments. Liana continued. It was used to track and eliminate pro-democracy activists, journalists, students. We have documentation proving he knew exactly how his technology would be used. Ace felt his jaw clench. How many people? At least 37 confirmed deaths. Probably more we haven't uncovered yet. Indigo pressed both hands to her belly, as if shielding her unborn child from the weight of those numbers. 37 people dead because of technology her husband had sold for profit. I was married to a mass murderer, she whispered. You were married to a man who lied to you, Liana corrected gently. A man who spent considerable effort hiding his true nature. That's not your fault, Indigo. But I should have known. How? Ace interrupted. Psychopaths are experts at appearing normal. That's what makes them dangerous. Liana nodded. The FBI has been tracking Griffin Tech for 3 years. We couldn't get close enough to gather evidence until you came forward. You're a hero, Indigo. Those files you copied will save lives. Hero. The word felt foreign on Indigo's tongue. Heroes were supposed to be brave, fearless, sure of their choices. She was just a pregnant woman who'd run when staying became impossible. What happens now? She asked. Now you heal, Liana said. You focus on that baby. And when you're ready, you testify. Help us make sure Bodhi never hurts anyone again. That evening, as Liana packed up her files and prepared to leave, she pulled Ace aside. Take care of her, she said quietly. I intend to. Good. Because she's going to need someone steady when this hits the news. The media circus will be intense. Ace hadn't thought about that. The inevitable moment when Indigo's story became public knowledge. When reporters would descend on their quiet farm looking for quotes and photographs, and the kind of sensational details that sold newspapers. How long do we have? A few days, maybe a week. I'll try to keep her name out of it as long as possible. But, Liana shrugged. Truth has a way of surfacing. After she left, Ace found Indigo on the cottage porch, rocking slowly in the chair he'd bought for her in town. The evening air carried the scent of apple blossoms and fresh hay, sounds of the farm settling into night. Penny for your thoughts, he said, settling on the porch steps. I keep thinking about those 37 people, she said. They had families, dreams, futures that got cut short because I wasn't brave enough to speak up sooner. You spoke up when you could, when you had proof. But what if I'd looked harder, asked more questions? What if I'd figured it out 6 months earlier, or a year? Ace was quiet for a moment, watching fireflies blink across the pasture like tiny fallen stars. You know what I think about sometimes? The night Liana died. Indigo looked at him, surprised. He rarely talked about his wife's death, keeping that pain locked away in some private corner of his heart. She had a headache, he continued. Just a regular headache. She took some aspirin, went to bed early. I stayed up watching TV, thinking about waking her to see if she wanted tea. He paused. I didn't. I figured she needed sleep more than tea. Ace, she had a brain aneurysm sometime that night. Probably while I was sitting downstairs watching late-night talk shows. And for the longest time, I thought, what if I'd checked on her? What if I'd insisted she go to the hospital for that headache? What if I'd done something different? Indigo's hand found his, their fingers interlacing in the gathering darkness. The thing about what-ifs, Ace said, is they can eat you alive if you let them. But they can't change the past. All they can do is keep you from living in the present. How? Do you bear it? The weight of all those what-ifs. I focus on what I can control, like making sure Zion knows he's loved, like being here for friends who need someone in their corner, like building something good instead of just mourning what's gone. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the farm. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, haunting and beautiful. The baby's been active tonight, Indigo said eventually. Good active or bad active? Good, I think. Like they're getting ready for something. As if summoned by her words, a contraction rolled through her belly. Not painful, just a tightening that made her breath catch. How often? Ace asked, instantly alert. First one in hours. I think it's just practice. But even as she said it, another one came. And another. Indigo, Ace said carefully. When's the last time you saw Dr. Mendez? Yesterday. Everything looked good. Baby's growing, heartbeat strong. She paused as another contraction hit. These feel different, though? Not like the false labor from before. Ace checked his watch. 7 minutes between contractions. Different. How? More purposeful. Like the baby's made a decision. 32 weeks. Still early, but not nearly as dangerous as it would have been 2 weeks ago. Babies born at 32 weeks had good survival rates, though they'd likely need time in the NICU. Should we call the doctor? Indigo started to say no, then gasped as the strongest contraction yet rolled through her. When it passed, she looked at Ace with eyes that held both fear and wonder. I think, she said quietly, our baby's ready to meet the world. An hour later, they were back at Millfield General Hospital, but this time the energy was different. Excited instead of panicked. Dr. Mendez confirmed what they'd both suspected. Indigo was in active labor, and this time there was no stopping it. 32 weeks is good, Dr. Mendez assured them as nurses prepped the delivery room. The lungs are developed enough. We'll have the NICU team standing by, but I'm optimistic about outcomes. You hear that? Ace said, squeezing Indigo's hand as another contraction hit. Your baby's a fighter, just like their mom, just like their chosen family. Indigo corrected, and Ace felt his heart skip a beat at the word. Family, somewhere outside. The hospital, the world continued its complicated dance of justice and consequence. FBI agents were building cases, prosecutors were preparing arguments, and a man who'd caused unimaginable pain was sitting in a cell waiting for judgment. But inside delivery room 3, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the miracle about to unfold. The arrival of a soul who would never know their biological father's darkness, who would grow up surrounded by people who chose love over fear, truth over convenience. Ready? Dr. Mendez asked. Indigo nodded, bearing down with the next contraction, and Ace stayed beside her through every moment of bringing new life into the world. At 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night that felt suspended between one life and another. Opal Grace Sheridan entered the world weighing 4 pounds, 3 ounces, with lungs that worked perfectly and a cry that sounded like victory. She's beautiful, Dr. Mendez said, placing the tiny, squirming bundle on Indigo's chest for just a moment before the NICU team took over. And feisty, always a good sign. Ace stared at the impossibly small person who'd just changed everything. Opal, named for the kind doctor who'd saved her life, with Grace added because sometimes that's all anyone could offer, had Indigo's dark hair and delicate features, but something in her expression reminded him of Zion. The way she seemed to take in the world with curious, unafraid eyes. Is she okay? Indigo asked, exhausted but alert as the medical team performed their assessments. She's perfect, Dr. Mendez replied. Small, but perfect. We'll keep her in the NICU for monitoring. But her vitals are strong. You did good, Mama. Mama. The words settled around Indigo like a warm blanket. After months of fear and uncertainty, she was finally someone's mother. Someone's safe harbor. Can I hold her? She whispered. Just for a minute before we get her settled. They placed Opal back in her mother's arms, and suddenly the hospital room fell silent except for the soft beeping of monitors and the quiet sound of a woman meeting her daughter for the first time. Hello, little one, Indigo murmured. I'm your mom. And this. She looked at Ace, who was standing frozen beside the bed, tears streaming down his face. This is Ace. He's the man who saved us both. Ace reached out tentatively, touching one tiny fist with his finger. Opal's grip was surprisingly strong, holding on like she already knew he was someone she could trust. "Hey there, Opal Grace," he said softly. "Welcome to the family." Family. There was that word again, but this time it felt official. Sealed by the miracle of new life and the choice to love beyond biology to AS, the NICU team wheeled Opal away for monitoring. Ace pulled out his phone and called Mira. "She's here," he said simply. "Healthy. Perfect. For pounds, 3 ounces. Opal Grace." "Opal Grace Sheridan," Mira repeated, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "That's got a nice ring to it. Mira, I'll tell Zion in the morning. He's been sleeping with one ear open, waiting for news." A pause. "You did good, Ace. Both of you." After hanging up, Ace settled into the chair beside Indigo's bed. She was staring at the ceiling, processing everything that had just happened. "She's really here," Indigo said wonderingly. "She is, and she's safe." "She's safe?" Ace confirmed. "Bodhi will never touch her. I promise you that." Indigo turned to look at him. This man who'd pulled over on a country road and decided to care. Who'd sat through labor contractions and FBI interviews with equal steadiness. Who'd given her daughter his name without hesitation. "Ace," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and complicated all at once. 3 words that carried the weight of everything they'd been through together. The fear, the hope, the choice to build something beautiful from broken pieces. "I love you too," he said, leaning forward to kiss her forehead. "Both of you. All of us. Even though I come with enough baggage to fill a freight train. Especially because of that. Means you're real. Means you've survived things that would break other people." He smiled. "Besides, I've got my own baggage. Zion and I are a package deal." "Good," Indigo said, closing her eyes. "I was hoping for a package deal." The next morning brought reporters to the hospital parking lot and FBI agents to the maternity ward. The story had broken overnight. Griffin Tech CEO arrested for human rights violations, arms dealing, and conspiracy. His pregnant wife, who'd blown the whistle, had given birth while he sat in federal custody. "The media's going crazy, Agent," Liana Griffin said, appearing in Indigo's room with coffee and grim news. "Someone leaked your name." "I'm sorry." Through the window, they could see news vans lining the street, reporters with cameras and microphones waiting for any glimpse of the woman who'd brought down a tech empire. "How bad is it?" Indigo asked. "Bad, but not insurmountable. The narrative's mostly positive. Brave whistleblower saves lives, that sort of thing. Still, you'll need security for a while. And privacy is going to be hard to come by." Ace was already thinking 3 steps ahead. The farm's isolated. Hard to reach without being seen coming. And Myra's got a shotgun she's not afraid to use on trespassers. "I can't ask you to." Indigo started. "You're not asking. I'm offering." Ace took her hand. "We're in this together now. All of us." A soft knock interrupted them. Zion appeared. In the doorway, his hair combed flat and his best shirt buttoned up to the collar. He was carrying a wrapped present and wearing the kind of serious expression reserved for important occasions. "Is it okay if I meet my sister now?" he asked. "Sister. Not half-sister or stepsister, just sister." As if biology was the least important part of family. "She's in the NICU," Indigo said. "But I think they'll let you peek through the window." 20 minutes later, the 4 of them stood outside the NICU nursery, looking through the glass at Opal Grace Sheridan. She was sleeping in her incubator, tiny chest rising and falling steadily, surrounded by monitors and machines that seemed enormous compared to her delicate frame. "She's so small," Zion whispered, pressing his nose to the glass. "You were even smaller when you were born," Ace told him. "Really? Really? Premature babies are fighters. They have to be." Zion studied his new sister with the intense concentration of an 8-year-old trying to memorize something important. Finally, he turned to Indigo. "I got her a present," he said, holding up the wrapped package. "It's a book. Dad used to read it to me when I was little. I thought maybe you could read it to her when she gets bigger." Indigo's throat tightened with emotion. "What's it called?" "The Runaway Bunny," Zion said solemnly. "It's about a mama bunny who loves her baby no matter what. Even if the baby runs away, the mama always finds them and brings them home." The symbolism wasn't lost on any of the adults. A story about unconditional love, about mothers who never give up, about finding your way home even when the journey gets complicated. Thank you, Zion, Indigo said, accepting the gift. I think Opal's going to love it. And I'll read it to her too, he added. Because I'm her big brother now, and that's what big brothers do. As they stood there watching over the newest member of their chosen family, the outside world with its reporters and federal cases and complicated consequences felt very far away. In this moment, all that mattered was the tiny person sleeping peacefully behind glass, surrounded by people who'd already decided to love her unconditionally. She's going to have quite a story to tell someday, Agent Griffin observed. Yeah, Ace said, slipping his arm around Indigo's waist. But she'll get to tell it surrounded by people who chose each other. That's not a bad way to start. Through the nursery window, Opal Grace stirred in her sleep, one tiny hand reaching toward the light, as if she already knew the world waiting for her was filled with more love than fear, more hope than worry. And in that gesture, for people who'd found each other by accident discovered they'd built something that felt a lot like forever. 6 months later, Opal Grace Sheridan was healthy enough to hate vegetables and stubborn enough to refuse afternoon naps, which everyone agreed meant she was thriving. She'd grown from 4 pounds of fragile hope into 15 pounds of determined personality, with eyes that missed nothing and a smile that could charm livestock, which was good, because she was surrounded by plenty of it. The farm had become their sanctuary in ways none of them had expected. After the media attention died down and Bodie Griffin was sentenced to life without parole for his crimes, the world had mostly forgotten about the pregnant whistleblower who'd brought down a tech empire. But Indigo, Ace, Zion, and Opal had built something more valuable than fame. They'd built a family. She's got your stubborn streak, Ace observed, watching Indigo try to convince Opal to eat pureed carrots. The baby was having none of it, turning her head away from every spoonful with the dramatic flair of someone who'd made an executive decision. My stubborn streak kept us alive, Indigo pointed out, wiping orange puree from Opal's chin. I'm calling it determination. Can I try? Zion asked, sliding into the chair beside them. At 9 now, he'd appointed himself Opal's entertainment committee, able to make her laugh when nothing else worked. He took the spoon and made airplane noises, swooping it through the air before landing it successfully in Opal's mouth. She clapped her tiny hands and opened up for more. Show off, Indigo muttered, but she was smiling. From the kitchen window, they could see Miro working in the garden, harvesting the last of the summer tomatoes. At 62, she moved with the steady rhythm of someone who'd found her pace and intended to keep it. The farm had grown in the past months. They'd added chickens, expanded the vegetable garden, and started selling at the farmer's market in town. The IT wasn't the life any of them had planned, but it was the life they'd chosen. The lawyer called. This morning, Indigo said, settling Opal in her high chair with some soft finger foods. The civil suit settlement came through. Ace looked up from the newspaper he'd been pretending to read. How much? Enough. Enough for Opal's college fund. Enough to buy our share of the farm from Mira. Enough to build that workshop you've been dreaming about. The workshop. Ace's plan to start making custom furniture, using the woodworking skills he'd developed during quiet evenings when Opal napped and the world felt peacefully small. It felt good to create things instead of just maintaining them. What about you? He asked. Any thoughts about going back to law? Indigo was quiet for a moment, watching Opal systematically destroy a banana with the focused intensity of a tiny scientist. I got an offer yesterday, she said finally. Public Defender's office in Lincoln. They want someone with experience in federal cases. That's good, right? It would mean helping people who can't afford help. People like I was 6 months ago. She paused. But it would also mean leaving this. Leaving what we've built. Lincoln's only 2 hours away, Ace pointed out. You could commute a few days. A week. We'd make it work. You sure? Indigo, he said, setting down his newspaper and really looking at her. I fell in love with a woman brave enough to take on a tech empire. You think I'm going to ask you to stop being brave now? Before she could answer, Opal chose that moment to throw her banana across the room with impressive accuracy, hitting the wall with a satisfying splat. All 3 adults turned to stare at her, and she clapped her hands in triumph. Definitely gets that from you, Ace told Indigo. The aim or the attitude? Both. Later that evening, after Opal was asleep and Zion was working on homework at the kitchen table, Ace and Indigo sat on the front porch watching the sun set over fields that now felt like home. The air smelled of approaching autumn and would smoke from Myra's chimney. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Indigo admitted. Quietly. What kind of shoe? The kind that reminds me this is too good to be true. That people like me don't get happy endings. Ace was quiet for a moment, thinking about grief and second chances and the way love sometimes arrived when you'd stopped looking for it. You know what I figured out? He said finally. What? Happy endings are just new beginnings in disguise. The story doesn't stop when two people fall in love, or when the bad guy goes to jail, or when the baby is born healthy. The story keeps going. And sometimes the best parts haven't even been written yet. As if to prove his point, Zion appeared in the doorway wearing his pajamas and holding the runaway bunny. Opal's awake, he announced. I think she wants her bedtime story. They found her standing in her crib, gripping the rails with determined fists and babbling at the mobile Ace had made for her, tiny wooden farm animals that cast gentle shadows on the nursery walls. Hey there, beautiful, Indigo said, lifting her daughter into her arms. Opal immediately snuggled against her mother's shoulder, thumb finding its way to her mouth. They asked Zion read about the mama bunny who would always find her little one no matter how far they ran. Ace thought about the strange mathematics of love, how it multiplied instead of dividing, how opening your heart to one person somehow made room for more. 6 months ago, he'd been a widowed single father going through the motions of living. Now he was part of something bigger, a chosen family built from broken pieces and sealed with trust. The end, Zion finished, closing the book. My favorite part, Indigo said softly. Mine too, Ace agreed, but as they stood there in the gentle glow of the nursery lamp, watching over a child who would grow up knowing she was wanted, protected, and loved beyond measure, it didn't feel like an ending at all. That it felt like the beginning of everything. Now I'd love to hear your story. Where are you watching from tonight? And when this story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments below. If this tale of second chances and chosen family touched your heart even a little, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story about the quiet miracles that happen when strangers decide to care. There's always another chapter waiting, always another soul who needs someone in their corner. Because sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we build ourselves, one brave choice at a time. Thank you for spending your evening with Ace, Indigo, Opal, and Zion. Until next time, remember that love doesn't always arrive when we expect it, but it always arrives exactly when we need it most.